Am I centered? Grant? Am I centered? Center me. Looks like I'm not centered. Am I centered?
Yes, and you're live.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Aaron Swartz podcast. I am going to take 1 second and give everybody the link because, oops, it's not here yet. Give me the link. Grant. We'll have the link in a moment and then everyone can watch and then we can go into today's show. Okay.
There's the link.
That's a good a place as any. Just a moment. And here it is here. And I'm adding it also to our little web page where we have told people. And now we can go live. I mean, we've already been live. Now we can do the show. All right. Links are distributed. So welcome everybody to the Aaron Swartz podcast. And we are very excited to try a little something new this week. The idea was Aaron is here in spirit like he always is. But we decided to not bring his writings into this week's topic because really there was nothing that applied. We looked, nothing applied. We're not here to sort of make things fit or anything. So we decided to just focus on the point of what we're going to doing, which is something I found to be very relevant in the current election, which is a comparison and analysis comparing Bolsonaro in Brazil to Trump here, and specifically comparing tactics that were used during their re-election campaigns, and in his case, the election campaign, and in light of the assassination attempt that happened a few weeks ago, and the striking similarities to an assassination attempt that happened to Bolsonaro. So that's why it seemed useful and relevant, and we were lucky enough to have someone from Brazil that could explain it to us and have it all make sense. So with that, I will let Andre take it away. Take it away, Andre.
Thank you, Liz. Let me share my screen. So we've been talking about Aaron's writing for some time now, 5 months maybe. And when we thought that Aaron may have something to say about that, it wasn't easy to find anything that would fit because Aaron doesn't talk about violence and this kind of politics that is way more, how can I say, divisive. He does complain about a lot of things that are related to politics today, like fake news and things like that. So they're correlated, but they're not really about this. And then I'm the guilty one to bring this topic here because I started talking to Lisa how part of this idea of reimagining politics is also the idea to talk about how things may be similar and not by coincidence. So here I am trying to introduce you all to this guy that almost no one knows in the United States. There is Jair Bolsonaro. Jair Bolsonaro tries to sell himself as an outsider, like Trump usually tried to sell himself as an outsider. And that's a funny thing because Bolsonaro has been in politics for 27 years as a congressman. So he's not really new. It's just like a way of marketing himself. And you're going to see this again and again. You see that here we have the flag of Israel, and Trump and Bolsonaro have this strong tie to Israel and the politics of this conflict between religion and politics, in the same way that Bolsonaro is trying to cooperate with Netanyahu with the war in Israel. So he's always like finding these strange alliances that are very similar in the right-wing fields all over the world. And you see this photo, it is taken during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, 2020. And Bolsonaro is without a mask. Only one bodyguard is wearing a mask because he's a denier like Trump was. So you're going to see a lot of similarities. Lisa can hear typing. So when we're gonna see Bolsonaro and think about the similarities with Trump, we're gonna see a person that says that he's very patriot, and it's a person that became the Brazil president. It's our former president. Bolsonaro is always aligned with the United States politics, and he tries to compare himself with Trump. And this doesn't go unnoticed because media does compare him with Trump. So how's this possible that other candidates think themselves as Trumps of their countries? So it's Trump so inspiring that copycats will appear all over and people want Trump in their country too, their own brand of Trump. That's not really what it means to compare yourself to Trump, but you're going to see a little more about that, how people use the image that Trump inspired, the right wing inspired, to sell themselves as something new or different or extreme in their own countries. So we have the Guardian here as a source, and every slide there is a journalist that is being quoted as a source of the news. There is no authorial contents besides what I'm talking. So when we see Bolsonaro as someone that copies Trump, we're going to see Bolsonaro as someone that is very integrated with the idea of the religious zealot. It's like he is a born-again believer. He used to be a Catholic, but he converted to evangelical religions and started going to all events. So this is a picture of him in the March for Jesus in São Paulo, if I'm not wrong. And he has this slogan, campaign slogan, Brazil above everything, God above all. So we have the same idea that religiosity or God is very important to the campaign of the far right. And then we have the same kind of playbook of campaigning. So this is no coincidence. Bolsonaro family is very close to Steve Bannon, that now is in jail. And Bolsonaro is trying to forge these ways of make the social media accounts and the marketing of the campaign be more popular or feel more like legit. And in this dinner that this photo was taken, Steve Bannon said something very weird. He came to Bolsonaro and said that maybe he was going to be attacked during his campaigns because of the anarchist climate in Brazil. So it's like he was foreseeing the future of what would happen because Bolsonaro was stabbed during his campaign. So how can Steve Bannon know the future like that? How can something like a stabbing or an attack on a president be something like that can be foreseen or predicted? Is that the thing that we are going to talk here, like a conspiracy theory? How's this possible? How they knew that was going to happen? Is history repeating itself? It's like a pattern. Did these two candidates did that on purpose? So maybe you're gonna start like putting tinfoil hats, but not what we're going to say here. We're gonna try to look into it and think if we're gonna look for a pattern, where should we look for a pattern? Not really on how the conspiracy works in the sense of planning, but a pattern in the sense of the scenario. So we have this strange silence here on the left, my left, I think it's the opposite in the transmission. Thomas Crook, the American shooter, and in the other corner, Adélio Bispo. This is the guy that stabbed Bolsonaro. And how you see the pictures don't show lots of things in common, but they're both loners. They didn't have that many friends. They used to keep them for themselves in public spaces and places they were frequenting. And they were both very religious. Adélio, in case, was even more because he was a missionary. He worked like preaching sometimes. He was registered in his church to do that. And they both posted on the internet that they were going to do something big. Adélio was way more vocal, but the choice of trying to communicate on the internet is something similar. They're both going to shooting galleries, and they frequented one a few weeks before going to the shooting. So this is strange. Why shooting galleries is a place where people like that meet or go? So Adélio used a knife. He didn't need to shoot, you know? And we have political activity, in the sense that Thomas was registered as a Republican and donated to the Democratic Party, and Adélio was member of a left-wing party in Brazil, and he used to try to be a candidate, but never got the opportunity. So what we're talking about is that even if you have someone like that doing something as an attempted murder, you have, in the case of the United States, the shooter was killed, but in Brazil he was arrested and he was acquitted, not pardoned. He is currently in a mental institution because he allegedly was following God's orders when he stabbed Bolsonaro. So there is this idea that's very easy to fall into, that's, oh, they're crazy, they're a little bit nuts, they're missing something, that's why they do those things. But we can try to learn something now. We can think there is a morbid curiosity around something like that happening. So people want some answers. People want to find some kind of theory. There is a very strong influence of using this curiosity to fuel clickbait journalism. That is using the idea of something, a mystery or a conspiracy, to produce fake news, to make this a political gaslighting, using the idea of what happened as something that is bigger than it is, because it needs to be. It's way too big of opportunity to not use it like that. But it is true that it's a recurring event, in the sense that it's not the first time someone tries to take the life of a president or a campaign candidacy president. And this is strange. Why do people, like strange people like that, do something against a candidate? We think that it's way more productive to think in terms of favorable sequence of events, in the sense that those people, they don't come from nowhere. There's a very strong build-up to make someone go and do something that extreme. So if you take a look at the United States, you're going to see escalation of violence. You have mass shootings. That this case, that the Trump assassination attempt was a mass shooting. 4 people were shot during the attempt. You have this idea that this is becoming more common. If you take a theoretical approach, there is Foucault that says when something is being repeated again and again, in the sense of a crime is committed more and more times, people get desensitized about it. They start to normalize it. But if you take a graph and look at it, it's becoming something terrifying. Only from 2013 to 2022, 170 mass shootings. If you take the few months of this year that we already had lived through, we're going to see lots of mass shootings. So it's intensifying very strongly. We have also these research attempts to try to find out what's the motive that these shooters or these people have. And usually the motive is employment or domestic. There is also interpersonal conflict, hate, psychosis, legal issues, and fame, but these are way less present and prevalent. So in this sense, we can think that there is something wrong with society that pushes people to the edge to do something like that. Because there is also correlation, you see there in the news on the bottom of the Journal of Mass Violence Research, of number of incidents involving family and public. So there is this almost dance of what's more prevalent each year, but it's always some kind of difficulty integrating these people with their close social circles, like family, and how they deal with the public, the pressures of the public. And you're gonna see a lot of them talking about hopelessness and resentment. And this graph I brought here because I think this is a strong relation that we have to talk about this destruction of what means to have a productive and calm or recognizable lifestyle, life condition, in the sense that things are getting harder and harder to pay rents, to have any kind of security of healthcare. So we always have this idea that the wealth is distributed in a fair way in society, where people that do a lot of work, do a lot of effort, have more money. But it's way too strange when you put in a graph and you see that 1% of all the people have almost 40% of all the riches, and the top 10% has almost everything else. What we divide with the 90%, it's very little when you compare. So there is a relation between poverty or inequality or difficulty of finding a pleasant life and these strange acts. We think that there is, because when you're talking about politics, people that have lots of money have a strange pull as a way stronger force in politics. So Trump is a billionaire. The Bolsonaro family is not really poor, nor is ultra rich, but is kind of backed by a lot of billionaires in Brazil too. So there is a strange thing where if you have a lot of money, you have way more power in your vote and in your political opinion. It's not as democratic as we imagine. So when you take this news from The Guardian, all billionaires under 30 have inherited their wealth. This means that there's these people that have born into wealth, they didn't do anything yet, and yet they have vast amounts of money and vast political power. So how does this affect our democracy or our capacity of doing politics? If you take a look of communication and how the power of wealth is wielded, you see that Elon Musk has bought Twitter, and what he has done with it. It's a large space in the internet to use for communication, and since he bought it, he is dismantling content moderation. He is allowing bots to be used way freer than before. He's restoring accounts of bad actors that distribute misinformation. So if someone that has money can shape communication like that, and we're not even talking about TVs or newspapers, we are only talking about the internet, imagine what does this mean for democracy, in the sense where we get our news and how they're portraying these events like the stabbing or the shooting. We're going to see that there is a correlation between the destruction of good journalists, investigative journalists that will give you answers, and this kind of clickbait fake news articles. So there is a movement in the United States of consolidation in press, where small funds of very rich people are buying newspapers, and they're changing the way they work. They are firing people that work in the newspapers, the people that write, the people that do the editing, and they are trying to focus the discussion of these newspapers on national news. They're moving away from local news. So this is a very strange thing to have. If you have few people with lots of money making communication harder for everyone and trying to have all the profits and all the news stories crafted somehow to appease their interests or their political views, you have a recipe for creating these kind of problems, of creating people that feel hopeless, feel resentments, that feel that something is going wrong because they have every year less condition, less things that they feel like they're like secure or happy or they can take for granted. So when the floor is collapsing collapsing on your feet, what do? You know, it's way easier to take something drastic like this. So I think we can talk a little bit about it.
Sure. I was especially interested. I wanted to hear a little bit more in what the effect of these assassination attempts were on the campaign, kind of respectively, between what the effect on the Trump campaign we kind of already lived through in terms of he got the photo op and it was temporarily emboldened. And it was also such a different time politically when it happened, in terms of, you know, we were still wondering if Biden was going to be okay. Did we even have a candidate? All that kind of stuff before we now have Kamala Harris have a pretty strong candidate. But it was interesting, the similarities when you were telling me about the effect it had on the Bolsonaro campaign. So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to gauge the effects when it's happening. Like you're saying that we have seen what's Trump done with it, but we don't know how this will affect the vote. And Bolsonaro, since it was in 2018, we can also look better about this issue. So in the case of Bolsonaro, he was like Trump, trying to always say things that were unpolite or were like very polemic, trying to, you know, win the news by being the talk of the day. So he used to make a lot of people feel bad about him, like antipathy. Like they felt like he was a brute and someone that was disgusting. And this attempt murder made him like a saint or someone that was at least a victim. And this helped a lot the campaign. So it was easier to take the discussion out of country or problems with what should be done with the politics or what's the projects that he had, and talk about how he was a victim, how he was suffering, how he needed to go to the hospital. Like for months, there was news about this, like on the
His
daily,
recovery and all that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
recovery and 1 month anniversary and all these things.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I don't it's sort of complete the way that you encapsulated it, and I don't have a lot to add. I just I felt like it felt important to get that out and give you a chance to tell people about it. I want to let people know that although we might take a break in August, we're going to be back in form in September and October, doing 2 shows a month, and really focusing in on elections and the media and elections and things like that, which are actually things that Aaron wrote a lot about.
Yeah.
And also there's just a lot going on now that's actually relevant to what he wrote about. And it's so weird. Yeah, we know it's odd going back to see what somebody wrote, 20 years ago when they were a kid about something. But it's just very interesting and relevant. And if it didn't, that's like today when there was literally nothing to add by him, we didn't. But in September and October, there's actually going to be a lot to talk about, and Aaron has a lot to say. And I think elections was really at the heart, elections and democracy and true democracy, as opposed to whatever we have, and whatever other countries have that they call democracy, was something he came back to a lot, actually, in his writing, and something he would talk about. When we were camping out in front of the Supreme Court, all that stuff kind of came up, and it was really exciting because we had like me and Aaron and Seth Sean from the EFF and other incredible people kind of walking by and stuff like that. And we were just having this ongoing discussion where other people would come and go. I think the pizza came and broke it up. We were actually having pizza delivered at the Supreme Court that night. And so it broke it up, and I was like, pizza, but everybody was starving. So it was important to feed them. But anyway, so I look forward to doing that in September and October. And thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate this, being able to have you on the show, being able to get other than an American perspective on things is also really wonderful. And I appreciate you being here for that. So that's it for this show. Anything else you'd like to add, Andre, before?
Just come to mind that the day after the stabbing, the sons of Bolsonaro posted a photo of the shirt with a stabbing mark, like the place where he was stabbed, but was Photoshop, was just for political goals, like to shock. It was a very strange thing that people use as a conspiracy.
So it wasn't real. It wasn't real.
Yeah, it was
picture?
a Photoshop. Yeah, like he
Oh,
was stabbed
okay.
here, but it felt like they were like taking a photo of the shirt, And Trump campaign has this idea that everyone on the convention was using this like first aid cotton pad on the ear. So like we sympathize with what happened to Trump. So it feels like the same kind of appropriation, like trying to make people feel closer to things that happened. Like people were using the same T-shirts.
Again, they're analogizing it to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Just like Jesus on the cross. Now we're all going to wear a Band-Aid over our ear.
We suffer with him.
And it's just like, wow, okay. Thanks for bringing that up. And
I imagine
that's
we're gonna
actually
see a lot of things like that yet.
Yeah, and I think we will see it. I don't, hopefully it won't do as much damage now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have to, only time will tell about whatever outrageous thing is going to happen in the next couple of months. And that's why we're going to double up in September, October, so we can cover it in a more timely way. All right, great. Well, thank you so much. And everybody, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks everybody for in the audience for coming on. And
Everyone.
we will see you in September. Bye.